Hello everyone, Jack here. Today I want to talk about safety, probable, target, and reach, bucketing your schools. Now if you're watching this video, I'm recording it on January 25th, so if you've got a high school senior, this video probably doesn't apply to you at this point. They've already pressed submit, and congratulations. If you have a high school junior, this is the exact time where, in my program, I start to transition my students' brains from what I call exploration mode to application mode. Now, it really occurs over the next 3 to 4 months, so there's still a lot more exploring that can be done, but this is the time of year that I first introduce this worksheet. And yes, in case you're wondering, I'm going to give this to you for free. There will be a link in the description where you can get this. Just know it won't be editable, so you will have to go and click File, make a copy, and then it's yours to keep. If you request permission for it, I'm going to reject it. The reason for that is I can't have you editing this version. You need to make a copy, and then it's yours to keep. I'm going to walk through exactly how this college planning template works with safety, probable, target, and reach. But before we get into that, let's discuss why bucketing schools is important. And I brought up high school seniors. This doesn't apply really. I brought up high school juniors. This very much applies right now. And even if you have a high school sophomore or freshman, I think it's important that you understand what's coming up on the horizon and how you can plan for it. So there are two main reasons why bucketing schools is important. The first is really the item that a lot of people mention, which is it's important to have a balanced school list. So as a student, you can balance your admission chances. If a student comes to me, even if they're valedictorian and have a 1600, if they say I'm only applying to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Stanford, they might be a valedictorian who's not going to college next year. That's the college application landscape we live in these days. And so it's important to have a balanced school list so you can reach for the stars, but also be able to say I'm going to college. That is reason number one. And yes, in my program, in case you're wondering, these days I have my students target a final school list of somewhere between 8 and 16 schools. That does not mean as a junior in January, your school list has to be there. In fact, at this point, my juniors, their school list still might be in the 30 or 40 school mark. They're still exploring. Like I said, they're still in exploratory mode and can be in that mode for the next handful of months. So when they first go in to actually complete this chart, they might have 25 or 30 schools on here, and that's okay. Eventually, we'll work to narrow it down, and seeing a visual like this allows students, as they're narrowing down that school list, to say, like in this case, you can see right here, if I were going to tell a student to start to cut down, it would be in the target category. This example student has a lot of schools that are in that target zone. And so as they're looking to cut down their list, they can look to actually cut down in that target zone versus obviously they have very few schools in the reach zone. And I would say you probably don't want to touch that. Right? So the first reason, a balanced academic school list to have a balanced chance of acceptance. Reach for the stars, but also be able to say that, Mom and Dad, I'm going to college. I'm not going to be under your roof next year. The second reason is much less talked about, but in my opinion, just as important. It's actually for financial reasons. If a student applies to a reach school and gets in, congratulations, but I'll tell you this, they're much less likely to get in and also receive merit scholarship money. It's a reach school for a reason. The college admissions landscape is a supply-demand economy. Schools know exactly where a student falls on the academic profile. As I typically say, there's a reason Harvard doesn't send merit scholarship money, $10,000 checks in their acceptances. They don't need to. They're Harvard. As an aside, the Ivy League doesn't even do merit scholarships, but that's for another time. The bigger point is a student is much, much more likely to receive merit scholarships right along with that acceptance when their schools are in this category, as I'm highlighting here, or this category, as I'm highlighting here, and much less likely when the schools get in this category, and certainly this category. In my program, safety schools means that you have a greater than 75% chance of getting in. Probable is somewhere between 50 and 75. Target means you have between a 50 and 25% chance of getting in, and reach means you have less than a 25% chance of getting in. Now, you might be saying, okay, Jack, that's great, but how do I possibly know what these percentages are? Well, I have many tabs up here. I will be putting the links to all of these tabs as I walk through them in the description. So you can access them for free. You can even open them up as I go along. The first thing that's important for you all to understand is data. Your high schooler, if you have a high school junior right now, does not have all the data associated with their profile that they're going to have when they actually apply to schools. It's junior year, January, right? They still have an entire semester to go in junior year, and even then they have first semester senior year that will likely be included in their eventual applications. Also, they might not have their finalized SAT or ACT score at all, and they certainly don't have their college essays. They haven't likely even created a Common App yet to fill out their application. You can see what I'm saying. There's a lot that still must go into their profile. And so it's important that as I walk through these next steps, you understand this is with a grain of salt. Your child's profile will likely grow considerably over the next 6 to 12 months before they apply, if they're a high school junior. And if they're a high school sophomore and freshman, this even more applies, right? Their entire portfolio has not been created yet, and so if you're watching this as a parent of a high school, you need to know that your high schooler's portfolio will grow. That might mean that this chart might change. It is fluid. So in my program, I have my students, after they start this chart in January of their junior year, actually reassess this chart every month moving forward. My students will reassess this chart and where schools fall and drag and drop accordingly. Before I get into these tabs, just so you know, I complete these tabs with the percentage chance being where the first letter of the school starts. So in this case, just as an example, for this example student, UMiami was really close to a 25% chance for this student. I'd call it a 24% chance. Boston College, as you can see, was much more around kind of the 10% chance mark. It's where the first letter of the school actually goes. And again, my students tell me that this chart is really helpful for them so they can actually just have a visual of what's going on with their college list. So now you might say, okay, Jack, this is great. My child actually has like a lot of schools that we're considering, and we're feeling good, and we've been watching some of your YouTube videos. We're getting going, but I'd love to make this chart. Great. Go click the link, make this chart. You can even start making this chart as I go through these steps on the video right now. Again, click File, make a copy, and it's yours to keep and edit. There are several resources you can use to create this chart for your child. Just know there is no end-all be-all one resource that's just going to give you exactly what you want. You have to mix and match. And also just know there is a portion of college applications that's subjective. And so ultimately, while I have 12 and a half years of doing this and have seen a lot of students go through and can make a pretty good guess where they fall, nothing's perfect. So just keep that in mind. This is a general chart, but I think the bigger theme of it is it's important to know that like a College of Charleston is here and a Boston College is here. Right? It's important to know in general which of these 4 buckets a school falls in, and that any parent in the country or student in the country can figure out which general bucket a school falls in. All right, resource number 1 is available to everyone in the country. This is what I think today is the most robust college admissions calculator out there. This is from CollegeVine. You will, if you use this, right, and again, I'm going to link this in the chat, you can actually go in and plug in a lot of your child's information. All right, you've got to create an account, and then you can see here, though, right, you can actually look at overall acceptance rates. You will then go through and plug in your child's information, everything like GPA to standardized test score and more. It'll even ask you about like what your high school's weighted GPA is, etc. Just know there are subjective components. For example, if you are watching this and you're in the state of Illinois, your child might work on a 5.0 GPA scale instead of a 4.01, right? That is taken into account. But just know none of these items are perfect because ultimately even GPA is subjective based on teachers, right? There are some schools that have grade inflation. It's not perfect, but it's at least going to accomplish the goal of giving you a sense of which bucket these schools might fall into. Because if you do this and you realize, oh wow, 100% of my child's schools are in the target zone, now it's time to start looking for maybe some reaches, probables, and safeties. This admission calculator has been highly regarded by my students, by my parents, and they really seem to like it because it's actually one of the few out there that will spit out an exact percentage chance, like this. You have a 7.2% chance, right? And that's kind of nice for some students to see. I don't recommend just doing that. If you stop there, that's one source of information. It might be worthwhile to use, but I recommend you use it in conjunction with the next resource. This will also be linked in the chat. So Naviance is typically offered at high schools, and these days there's some other platforms coming out that schools are transitioning to, such as Score. There are also a handful of others that my students have. Regardless, here is why Naviance, in my opinion, is actually the strongest predictor of your chances of admission. Naviance uses data from the last 10 years of students who attended your high school or your child's high school. Why is this important? Well, because where your child goes to high school, other factors are used in admissions. Right? As an example, college admissions departments know if you go to one of the hardest high schools in the country. And so, while this CollegeVine provides a general chance, when you get into Naviance, it's going to show you, hey, 12 students over the last 10 years from your high school applied to this college, and here's the data on if they got in, if they got accepted, rejected, waitlisted. That's really good to know. And you know what's even better? Then it'll plot where your child falls on that chart. If you don't believe me, here you go. Check it out. This is what a Naviance chart looks like. There we go. As you can see, in this case, we are using the SAT along the bottom. You can actually switch that to the ACT if you want. GPA along the top. And again, here's the best part, is that GPA is the same school GPA for everyone you're seeing. What I mean by that is this GPA, this scale applies to every student on this chart. It is your child's high school, and it's the exact same process and has been for the last 10 years. So some families, right, when they go into like CollegeVine, they're like, well, GPA, but it differs across the country, and Illinois has a 5.0, and I do weighted, but my best friend who lives in another state doesn't do weighted. This solves all that. It's this GPA. This chart is just students who've gone to your high school. So again, if you want, my opinion, the best resource to give you the best idea of where you fall, it's probably Naviance or Score or the alternative that are coming out. Here's how it works. SAT runs along the bottom. You can switch that to ACT if you want. GPA runs along the top. And as you can see, this is your child's blue dot, the one light blue dot. This, by the way, is called the Scattergram chart. Naviance has a lot of different functions. I think it's a really good application, but the Scattergram chart is far and away, in my opinion, the most helpful. I strongly encourage you to go to the Scattergram chart. Then, here's what this shows. You will pick a college. So, let's just use, because for the rest of this, I'm going to actually use Stanford. Let's use Stanford as an example. Your child will choose Stanford. This is representing every student from your child's high school who, over the last 10 years, has applied to Stanford. This is all the people who have applied to Stanford from your child's high school. All these little red X's, rejections. Okay, all of these green check marks, acceptances, and all of these blue dots, waitlist. Your child is here. So in this example, congratulations, it's looking like your child's going to get accepted to Stanford. Now again, this obviously was just an example. This chart would not be representative of Stanford because I can almost guarantee these days the average SAT score is significantly higher than a 1410. But I hope that allows you to see the picture. What this will do is you can see if your child's blue dot is in a sea of green check marks, guess what? It's probably one of these two categories. If your child's blue check mark or blue dot is in a sea of red X's, probably in this category, right? And you can figure out the rest. This will not spit out an exact down to the 10th of a percentage number like CollegeVine will. But again, I think there are other pros that really can help you. So perhaps a nice attempt might be start with Naviance, get your general bucket down. Like, okay, is this a safety, a probable, target, reach? Naviance, I can just see where my blue dotted is and determine. And then you can take step 2. You can go to CollegeVine and you can see what it spits out. And that might allow you to then tweak that percentage if you want. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but it's how you utilize resources to the best of your ability to come up with an actual bucket that you feel is best representative of your child in that college. Highly encourage Naviance Scattergram chart. If your high school doesn't offer a Naviance or score, etc., well, then you've got CollegeVine, right? I also will put out there niche.com has a scattergram chart. Actually, niche.com scattergram. They also have kind of a scattergram chart function, which may be worth trying, which is also a free resource. So I will also link to that in the chat. So lots of options there. All right, now that's method number 2. Method number 3 is just look at the acceptance rate. Look at the typical SAT, ACT score. Make a gut check. This might seem too simple, but I'll be honest, this is really effective, especially I've seen students who like misplace a school by 2 categories. And I just ask them, what's the acceptance rate? Right? What's the typical SAT score? Where do you fall? Okay, take that into account. Do you think you might need to move the category? It's just kind of more of a gut check, but it's really helpful. Like, here's Stanford. You can use a resource like College Simply. I'll link it in the chat. And if you click admissions, you can see, okay, the acceptance rate is 5%. I'm going to tell you right now, a school with an acceptance rate of 5% is a reach, and a far reach for any student in the country, even if you're valedictorian, even if you have a 1600 SAT score. It is a far reach. Really, any acceptance rate that's in the single digits is going to be a far reach for anyone in the country. So just very quickly, right, you can just identify, okay, it's a reach school. Doesn't even matter what your child's background is. Schools with a single digit acceptance are a reach school. 90+% of those students are getting rejected. If you scroll down on College Simply, you can see more, right? They have SAT and ACT requirements, and you can see what the middle 50% is. Again, this should just give you an understanding, like if the average SAT is 1500, that's 99th percentile. I think we can confidently say this is going to be a reach school for anyone. It gets obviously a little more nuanced when you don't have such a black and white school like Stanford, but again, that's often, I'll tell my students, just look up the acceptance rate. Let's just get an idea. Like, are we dealing with a school with an 80% acceptance rate or an 18% or an 8? And I'll kind of help you give that gut check. Now, College Simply is a data conglomerator. It is not the end-all be-all of the data. So if you start to get into the details and you're like, well, I want to really see, like, is it 5%? Is it 5.1%? Is it 4.9%? Also, sometimes College Simply and all these conglomerators can be late on their data. So they might be using data from not the most previous admission cycle. So if you're here and you're saying, I want to find the most recent data, well, then I've got a resource for you. It's a little harder to dive through. So again, at the start, you might want to use something like College Simply. But if you want to really dive deep into the data, then we'll stick on Stanford. You can Google school common data set. The common data set is a collaborative effort among the higher education community and publishers as represented by the College Board. Data are presented in the same common format. So this is pretty cool, right? Used by most institutions of higher education to facilitate comparisons among institutions. What are we doing right now in this video? We are comparing, right? And so I use this. I use the common data set. But again, I nerd out about stuff like this. The common data set has been around for, I don't know, like 15 years. And again, it was basically put together because 15 years ago, there was no great way for schools to present data in a consistent format. And so the common data set came along and said, hey, colleges, you want to get on board? We're going to basically set up a format, and it'll allow you to just fill in our format. And then if you all get on board, families, parents, students out there will actually be able to have one way that this format is presented, this data is presented. And a lot of schools have jumped on board. Not every school. So if you Google your school common data set, might not be there. But a lot of schools have jumped on board. And in this case, you can see Stanford, because I'm sticking with the Stanford example, has common data sets dating back to 2008. And you can check them all out. Here's the most recent, just to show you what this looks like. You can check out the common data set. It obviously starts with, at the top, Stanford common data set, most recent year. This is probably going to be what most people want, which is the admissions section. But if you want, you can look at everything like what percentage of students receive financial aid, right? What are the annual expenses? You can even, if you're watching this and your child's considering transferring, you can check out all this data. Here's why this is great, is because this is from the source. College Simply is good, but it's basically one layer removed, right? And then we're hoping that College Simply has done a good job of conglomerating that data and done it effectively. This is the source, all right? So I can confirm that if you're like, the admissions rate is slightly different, this is correct. This is correct. This will be close, but this is the most accurate. So let's scroll down to section C. So I can just show you what this looks like, okay? So you can see here this is the first year freshman admission. You can see here, total first year freshman men who applied, 28,332. Total first year freshman women who applied, 27,139. And then you can see the admissions rates. All right. So you can see total first year degree seeking who applied, right, which is just the sum of these, and then here is the percentage of who is admitted, and then you can see who enrolled. So this will be kind of fun. Let's just do this. So you got here, let's see how close it is to College Simply. 2190 divided by 55,471. So you can see 3.9, so 4%. So it's 1% off, right? 1% off. Now, what are the reasons for this? It could be a ton of different reasons. My guess is this just still isn't the most recent admissions data. This might be from a cycle or two ago. That's my guess. I mean, there are a lot of other reasons, right? College Simply is a private company. You can wonder where they're getting their data, where they're getting it from. Also, this could somehow include transfer, etc. But again, you can see we're a percentage off. We're 1 percentage point off. So this is the correct data. Stanford has a 3.9% acceptance rate, which is obviously extremely low. If you go all the way down, you can even see data on stuff like the wait list, etc. So I hope all of this insight helps. Again, I think the biggest takeaway here is if you have a high school senior, congratulations, this doesn't apply to you. If you have a high school junior, this really applies to you. And if you have a high school sophomore and freshman, honestly, it's never too early, right? Parents ask me what the number one factor is in college admission success. It is starting early. So if you have a high school junior, sophomore, or freshman, I recommend go in, click the link below, download this template, click File, make a copy so you can actually edit it. Please don't ask for request permissions. I will reject you. Just click File, make a copy. It's yours to keep, and then you can play around with it. Start seeing if your child has their first school list. Start just figuring out which of the buckets these go into. If you really want, then print this out, tape it to the fridge. It'll help you and your child understand where it falls. And sure, sometimes, you could just write this, right? Like school, reach, school, target. But a lot of my students tell me how helpful it is to see it in visual form because, again, like in this case, it's very obvious to see this student is target heavy. And so it might be time to start exploring options for probable safety and reach schools and actually eventually start limiting their target schools. Hope this was helpful. Stay tuned. I've got some really fun announcements coming up about everything from a slight brand change. My name is going to change. My company name is going to change. Not my personal name. My company name is going to change. I'm actually bringing on for the first time ever a college coach to help provide additional support. He's worked inside a college admissions department, which I have not, and I'm so excited for the additional insight he'll be bringing to my team. And lastly, stay tuned pretty soon. In fact, if you're watching this, it may already be out, but I will be launching an entirely free online community full of resources just like this. In addition, it'll offer an entire community aspect where students and parents can actually ask questions to me and I will reply. It'll be called my College Confidence Community, and that will be launching soon. If you want to join the waitlist for that College Confidence Community, I'm actually going to put a link to that in the section below as well. Just click the link and click request permission to join. It'll ask a few questions. I am going to take who joins and who doesn't join very seriously because I want it to be a community full of parents who actually care about their child's future and are willing to commit to learning and applying those lessons and giving them back to their child. So, appreciate you taking the time. Click this download, utilize it, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you know where to find me. Contact is in the description. Until next time, have a good one.